My brother swore the IRS was coming for us, terrifying me into signing away my inheritance to save our grandfather from prison. 4 years later, Grandpa found me homeless and revealed the truth. There was no investigation. Now, I'm taking back what's mine. This is where the story truly begins, and the secrets I uncovered will leave you speechless. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The tapping on the glass sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the parking lot. My body seized up instantly. The reflex was born of 6 months of living in a sedan. A knock meant police, it meant security guards, or it meant someone dangerous checking to see if the door was unlocked. I scrambled to pull the blanket up over my nose, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The windows were fogged up from my own breath, creating a cocoon of condensation that hid the world outside, but I could see the silhouette of a man standing there. I held my breath, praying he would go away. Please just go away. I'm not bothering anyone. I'll move in the morning. The tapping came again, gentler this time. A voice, muffled by the glass and the hum of the distant highway, drifted through. Alice, Alice, are you in there? The sound of my name froze the blood in my veins. It wasn't the harsh bark of a cop. It was a voice I hadn't heard in 3 years. A voice that belonged to polished mahogany desks, the smell of old paper and peppermint, and safety. I reached out with a trembling hand and rolled the window down 3 inches. The cold night air rushed in, biting at my exposed cheeks, but I didn't feel it. I only felt the crushing weight of shame as I looked up into the lined, confused face of Grandpa Cameron. He looked older than I remembered. His silver hair was thinner, his shoulders slightly more stooped, but his eyes were the same piercing blue. He was wearing his heavy wool coat, the one he always wore to the opera, and he was standing in a muddy Walmart parking lot at 2 in the morning, peering into the backseat of a beat-up Honda Civic that smelled like stale clothes and despair. "Grandpa," I whispered, my voice cracking. He didn't answer immediately. He took a step back, his eyes scanning the interior of the car. He saw the piles of laundry in the passenger seat. He saw the cooler on the floorboard where I kept my milk and cheese cold. He saw the way I was curled up in the fetal position, wearing 3 layers of sweatshirts. His face crumbled. It wasn't anger. It was a look of pure, unadulterated heartbreak that hurt worse than any slap could have. "Alice," he said, his voice trembling, "what on earth? What are you doing here?" I sat up, pushing the hair out of my face, trying to salvage some scrap of dignity where none existed. I'm just between places right now, Grandpa. It's fine. Really." He didn't listen to the lie. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handkerchief, wiping a spot on the window I had missed. He leaned in closer, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. "But the house," he stammered. "The brownstone on Elm Street, the one I gave you for your 22nd birthday. Didn't you like it?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and suffocating. I stared at him, my mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. My brain was short-circuiting. The house. The beautiful, historic brownstone with the garden in the back. The one Marcus told me was leveraged to the hilt. The one Marcus told me was the reason Grandpa Cameron was going to die in a federal prison if I didn't act fast. I started, tears pricking my eyes. "Grandpa, I don't have the house." "You sold it," he asked, looking hurt, "to buy this." He gestured vaguely at the rusted car. "No," I choked out, the dam finally breaking. "I never got it. Marcus said the estate was in debt. He said we had to liquidate my share to pay your back taxes. He said he was saving you." Grandpa Cameron went perfectly still. The confusion on his face slowly evaporated, replaced by a terrifying clarity. The air around him seemed to drop 10 degrees. He stood up straight, his gaze shifting from my pitiful state to the dark horizon, his jaw setting into a line of granite. "Taxes," he repeated, the word sounding like a curse. "I haven't owed a dime to the government since 1985. He looked back at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw a dangerous flicker in his eyes that had nothing to do with kindness. "Get out of the car, Alice," he commanded softly. "You're coming with me. We have a lot to discuss about your brother." At that moment, listening to the steel in his voice, I realized that the betrayal was worse than the poverty itself. Marcus hadn't just stolen my money. He had stolen 4 years of my life, using my love for our grandfather as the weapon to do it. Sitting in the passenger seat of Grandpa Cameron's pristine Lincoln Town car felt like entering a spaceship. The leather was soft and warm, the heater hummed silently, and the smell, that familiar mix of peppermint and expensive cologne, made my chest ache. I felt filthy. I was wearing sweatpants that hadn't been washed in a week and a hoodie with a coffee stain on the sleeve. I tried to make myself as small as possible, terrified of getting grime on the upholstery. Grandpa drove in silence for a long time. He didn't take me to a hotel. He took me to a 24-hour diner, the kind with neon signs and laminated menus, a place where people wouldn't look twice at an old man in a suit and a young woman looking like a vagrant. He ordered me a stack of pancakes, eggs, bacon, and a milkshake. He ordered himself a black coffee. He waited until I had eaten half the plate, my hands shaking as I shoveled the food in before he spoke. "Start from the beginning," he said. "Don't leave anything out. What exactly did Marcus tell you?" I swallowed a mouthful of eggs, the taste of hot food making me feel almost dizzy. "It was right after you moved into the retirement community. 4 years ago, Marcus came to my apartment. He looked panicked. He was sweating. He had all these folders with him." I closed my eyes, the memory vivid and nauseating. "He told me that the audit had just come in. He said your accountant had been skimming off the top for decades and that the IRS had flagged the entire estate. He said there were millions in unpaid property taxes and penalties." Grandpa Cameron's hand tightened around his coffee mug. His knuckles were white. "Go on." "He said that because you had transferred the deeds to us, the IRS was going to seize everything," I continued, my voice barely a whisper. "But worse, he said they were going to charge you with fraud. He said at your age, prison would be a death sentence. He told me, 'Do you want Grandpa to die in a cage, Alice?'" "That son of a," Grandpa muttered, cutting himself off. He took a slow breath. "And the solution?" "He said he had a friend in forensic accounting who could fix it, but we had to liquidate my assets immediately to pay the settlement. He said his share was tied up in the business trust, so my share, the house, the stocks, was the only liquid capital we had. He made me sign a quitclaim deed. He promised it was temporary. He said once the investigation was cleared, he'd pay me back." And then, nothing," I said, looking down at my plate. "I moved out of the apartment I was renting because I couldn't afford it without the stipend from the trust. I called him, and he said the investigation was dragging on. Then he stopped answering. Then, a year ago, I lost my job at the landscape firm. I reached out to Mom and Dad, but they wouldn't help." Grandpa looked up sharply. "Laura and Richard knew." "I don't know if they knew about the taxes," I admitted. "But when I asked for help, Dad just said, 'Marcus tells us you're going through a rebellious phase. We're not funding your lifestyle, Alice. You need to learn responsibility like your brother.'" Grandpa Cameron closed his eyes. A single tear leaked out, tracking through the wrinkles on his cheek. It was the most painful thing I had ever seen. "I thought you were traveling," he whispered. "Marcus told me you were in Europe. He said you were finding yourself and didn't want to be disturbed. He showed me postcards." "I never sent any postcards," I said flatly. "I know that now." He opened his eyes, and the sadness was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. He reached across the table and took my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "He took your house. He took your trust fund. And he let you sleep in a car while he told me you were backpacking through France." "He has everything, Grandpa," I said, feeling the hopelessness rising again. "I signed the papers. Legally, I gave it to him. I was stupid. I didn't read the fine print because I trusted him." "You trusted your brother," Grandpa corrected firmly. "That is not stupidity," That is loyalty, and he weaponized it. He let go of my hand and reached into his inner coat jacket, pulling out a slim, leather-bound notebook. He opened it and began writing something down with a gold fountain pen. "He thinks he's won," Grandpa said, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "He thinks because the papers are signed, it's over." But Marcus always was sloppy with the details. He was so focused on the money, he never bothered to learn about the land itself. "What do you mean?" I asked. Grandpa looked up, a thin, dangerous smile playing on his lips. "When I gifted those deeds, I included a very specific reversionary clause. It's an old-fashioned legal mechanism. I doubt a modern wealth manager, like Marcus, even noticed it. It basically says that if the gifted property isn't used as the recipient's primary residence for the first 5 years, or if it is sold or transferred without my express written consent, the ownership reverts to the grantor." My eyes widened. "The grantor, that's me," Grandpa said. "Marcus has been renting out your brownstone for 4 years, hasn't he?" "I think so. I saw a listing for it online once." "Then he doesn't own it," Grandpa said, snapping the notebook shut. "I do, and I think it's time we reminded him who actually built this family's fortune." But he had forgotten one crucial thing. Marcus wasn't just greedy. He was paranoid. And waking him up from this dream wasn't going to be as simple as waving a piece of paper. To understand how Marcus did this, you have to understand who we were to each other. Or rather, who I thought we were. We were the gold dust twins. That's what Mom called us. Marcus was 4 years older, the golden boy with the winning smile and the varsity jacket. I was the quiet one, the one who liked dirt and plants and drafting tables, but he always protected me. When I was bullied in 3rd grade, Marcus walked me to class every day for a month. When I got my heart broken in high school, he threatened to key the guy's car. I worshipped him. I didn't see the shift happen, or maybe I just refused to see it. The shift started when he got into that fancy business school. He started talking differently. Everything became about leverage, assets, networking. He stopped seeing people and started seeing rungs on a ladder. But my parents, Laura and Richard, ate it up. My mother, Laura, is an interior designer who cares more about the aesthetics of a family than the reality of one. She loved Marcus because he was a perfect accessory, handsome, successful, driving a Porsche. My father, Richard, a corporate lawyer, loved Marcus because Marcus spoke his language. They were a triumvirate of success, and I was the outlier who wanted to design public parks. After Grandpa took me from the diner, he insisted on checking me into a hotel suite, not just a room, but a suite. He gave me his credit card and told me to buy clothes, get a haircut, get whatever I needed. He said he needed 2 days to set things in motion. I spent the first day just showering. I scrubbed my skin until it was raw, trying to wash off the smell of the car. On the second day, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked Marcus up. I found his public Instagram profile. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror of my stolen life. There was a photo of him from 3 weeks ago. New investment property in the portfolio, real estate hustle. It was my brownstone, my beautiful Victorian brownstone. He had gutted the garden I loved to put in a sleek, soulless concrete patio. I scrolled down. There was a picture of him with Mom and Dad at a gala. They were beaming, glasses of champagne in hand. The caption read, "Family is everything. Blessed to have a support system that understands the grind." A support system. I felt a bile rise in my throat. Mom and Dad weren't just innocent bystanders. They were his cheerleaders. I remembered a specific conversation with my mother right before I ended up in the car. I had called her, desperate, asking if I could stay in the guest room for a few weeks while I looked for a job. "Oh, Alice," she had sighed, her voice sounding bored. "Marcus told us you were having some mental health struggles. He said you were refusing to work and demanding money. We agreed with him that enabling you would only hurt you. We're practicing tough love, sweetie. It's for your own good." Tough love. Marcus had poisoned the well so thoroughly that my own parents thought my homelessness was a temper tantrum. He was a monster, but he was a charming, well-dressed monster who knew exactly what people wanted to hear. I was sitting on the hotel bed, staring at the photo of him smiling that shark-like smile when my phone buzzed. It was Grandpa Cameron. "It's set," his voice said, sounding grim. "Sunday dinner. Your parents are hosting. Marcus will be there. He thinks I'm coming to announce the final distribution of the rest of the estate before I update my will." "He thinks you're dying," I asked. "He thinks I'm senile," Grandpa corrected. "He thinks I'm going to sign over the lake house, and the remaining bond accounts to him to manage for me." "What do I do?" I asked, my hand trembling slightly. "You show up," Grandpa said. "You show up and you look like $1 million. I've already spoken to my attorney. We have the leverage, Alice, but we need him to admit it. We need him to say it in front of Richard and Laura. We need to break the spell." "He's going to lie," I warned. "He's going to say I'm crazy. He's going to say I'm on drugs." "Let him," Grandpa said, "because while he's been playing checkers, I've been playing chess. And he doesn't know about the trap I've set with the bank." I hung up the phone and looked at myself in the hotel mirror. I looked different. The fee. R was gone. The shame was gone. Marcus wanted the estate. He was going to get exactly what he deserved. The next morning, the transformation began. It wasn't just about the clothes, though they were a necessary armor. It was about recalibrating my mind. For 3 years, I had been Alice the victim, Alice the homeless wanderer, Alice the failure. Marcus had constructed a narrative cage for me, and I had dutifully walked inside and locked the door. Grandpa Cameron had arranged a meeting with his longtime attorney, Mr. Sterling. Sterling was a man who looked like he had been carved out of oak, sturdy, ancient, and unyielding. His office was in one of those glass skyscrapers downtown, the kind where the elevators move so fast your ears pop. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my car, watching Mr. Sterling pore over the documents Marcus had made me sign. Grandpa sat next to me, his cane resting against his knee, his face unreadable. "It is aggressive," Sterling said finally, taking off his reading glasses and rubbing the bridge of his nose. He used a standard quitclaim deed, but he attached a private agreement regarding the settlement of debts. "It's clumsy." "Is it legal?" I asked, my voice steady. "On the surface, yes. You signed it voluntarily," Sterling said. He looked at me with pity, which I hated. "However, the premise of the contract is fraudulent." He cites a pending IRS litigation regarding the Cameron estate as the consideration for the transfer. Since no such litigation exists, the contract is voidable based on fraudulent inducement. "But that takes time," Grandpa cut in. "Court cases take years. Marcus will drag it out. He'll drain the accounts before a judge even bangs a gavel." "Precisely," Sterling nodded. "Which is why the reversionary clause is our ace in the hole, but we need proof of the violation." "The violation is that I don't live there," I said. "We need to prove who lives there," Sterling corrected. "If Marcus has tenants, and if he's collecting rent, he has not only triggered the reversion clause by using it as an investment property without permission, but he has also committed income tax fraud if he hasn't declared it, which, knowing his recent financials, he likely hasn't." I spent the afternoon doing something that terrified me. I went back to my house. I parked my rusted Honda a block away and walked. The neighborhood was just as I remembered it, tree-lined, quiet, expensive. When I reached the brownstone, my breath hitched. The flower beds I had lovingly planted with hydrangeas and hostas were gone, replaced by low-maintenance river rocks. The charming, chipped blue paint on the front door was now a sleek, soulless black. It looked like a corporate rendering of a home, not a place where people lived. I waited. 20 minutes later, a young couple walked out. They looked like college students or maybe young professionals. I stepped out from behind the oak tree. "Excuse me," I called out. They stopped, looking at me warily. I realized I was still wearing my hoodie, though I had showered. "I'm sorry to bother you," I said, putting on my best lost neighbor voice. I used to live here. I was just wondering, do you rent from Marcus? The girl exchanged a glance with the guy. Yeah, we rent from the management company, M&L Holdings. M&L, I repeated. Marcus and Laura? No, surely my mother wasn't officially involved. Do you happen to know the landlord's name? Mr. Bennett, the guy said. Why? Just checking something, I smiled, though my insides were twisting. Does he treat you okay? Fixes things on time? He's a ghost, the guy laughed. We just Venmo the rent to the account and never see him. Honestly, the place has some wiring issues he refuses to fix, but the location is great. I thanked them and walked away, my heart pounding. Venmo. He was taking rent payments directly, likely into a personal account, bypassing the estate trust entirely. I got back to my car and pulled out the new phone Grandpa had bought me. I texted him one word, confirmed. The rest of the day was spent at the mall. I didn't shop for fun, I shopped for war. I went to the high-end department stores I used to browse in when I had a life. I bought a tailored navy pantsuit, sharp and severe. I bought a cream silk blouse. I bought heels that clicked with authority on the floor. I went to a salon and had them cut off the dead, matted ends of my hair, styling it into a sleek, shoulder-length bob. When I looked in the mirror at the end of the day, the woman staring back wasn't the girl sleeping in the Walmart parking lot. She was cold. She was angry. And she looked exactly like the granddaughter of a tycoon. Sunday arrived with a gray, overcast sky that matched the roiling in my stomach. Grandpa Cameron picked me up in the Lincoln. He was dressed in his Sunday best, a three-piece charcoal suit, but he looked frail. I knew he was playing it up. He needed them to underestimate him one last time. Remember, he told me as we turned into the long driveway of my parents' estate. Let him talk. Marcus loves the sound of his own voice. He will dig his own grave if you hand him the shovel. My parents' house was a sprawling, modern mansion that lacked any warmth. It was a showroom designed by my mother to impress, not to comfort. We parked behind Marcus's Porsche. Seeing that car, shiny, arrogant, expensive, made my blood boil. That car was bought with my house. That car was bought with my fear. We walked to the front door. I had a key, but I rang the bell. I wanted them to come to me. The door opened, and my mother, Laura, stood there. She was wearing a beige cashmere sweater set, holding a glass of white wine. Her smile was practiced, ready to greet her aging father. It froze when she saw me. Her eyes widened, scanning me from the heels to the fresh haircut. She blinked, as if trying to reconcile the image of the unstable, drug-addicted daughter Marcus had described with the polished woman standing on her doorstep. Alice, she breathed, my God, we didn't know you were coming. Hello, Mother, I said, my voice cool. I stepped past her into the foyer, the clicking of my heels echoing on the marble. I hope you set an extra plate. Of course, she stammered, following me. It's just, Marcus said you were in. He said you were in a facility in Vermont. Did he? I asked, turning to look at her. He has a vivid imagination. We walked into the dining room. My father, Richard, was pouring a drink at the sidebar. Marcus was sitting at the head of the table, Grandpa's usual spot, scrolling on his phone. When I walked in, Richard dropped the ice tongs. They clattered onto the silver tray. Marcus looked up. For a split second, I saw pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes. It was a flash, quick as a camera shutter, before he wrestled his face into a mask of brotherly concern. Alice, he exclaimed, standing up and coming around the table with his arms open. Profound relief. We've been so worried. Why didn't you call? We thought. I didn't hug him. I stood perfectly still, letting him bounce off my force field. You thought what, Marcus? That I was still in Europe, or that I was in a facility. You seem to have told Mom and Dad two different stories. He stopped, his smile faltering. He looked at Grandpa, then back at me. I was trying to protect them from the truth, Alice. We know you've been struggling. I didn't want them to worry about your episodes. He was good. He was so incredibly good at this. He pivoted instantly to the caring brother dealing with a crazy sister angle. I'm fine, Marcus, I said, taking a seat at the table across from where he had been sitting. Please, sit down, we have a lot to catch up on. The dinner was excruciating. My parents were on edge, glancing between me and Marcus. Grandpa sat silently at the other end of the table, eating his soup with a trembling hand, playing the part of the confused old man perfectly. Marcus spent the first 20 minutes filling the silence with chatter about the market, about his new clients, about how difficult the economy was. He was building up to something. I waited. Finally, as the main course was served, Marcus turned to Grandpa. "Grandpa," he said, his voice dropping to that serious, professional tone, "we need to discuss the restructuring of the remaining assets. With the market volatility, holding onto the lake house and the municipal bonds in your personal name is risky. I have the papers here to transfer them into the Family Management Trust. I can sign as trustee, take the burden off you." He reached for a leather portfolio under his chair. "Is that wise?" I asked loud and clear. Marcus snapped his head toward me. "Excuse me, Alice, this is complex financial planning. It's not really your area." "Isn't it?" I picked up my wine glass, swirling the red liquid. "I seem to remember you being very concerned about complex financial matters 4 years ago, specifically tax matters." The room went silent. The only sound was the clinking of silverware. "What are you talking about?" my father asked, looking irritated. "Alice, don't start drama." "I'm just curious, Dad," I said, keeping my eyes locked on Marcus. "Marcus, how is that IRS investigation going? You know, the one that required me to sign over my house to save Grandpa from prison." My mother gasped. "Prison, what are you talking about?" Marcus's face turned a mottled shade of red. "Alice, stop it," he hissed. "She's confused, Mom. This is what I was talking about. She gets paranoid delusions." "Do I?" I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a weapon, but I might as well have. I pulled out a single sheet of paper, the affidavit from the county clerk showing the ownership history of the brownstone. "Because according to you, my house was liquidated to pay a settlement," I said, my voice risen. Just enough to command the room. "But this document says M&L Holdings, your company, owns it, and has owned it for 4 years. That's a holding strategy," Marcus stammered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "It's complicated, you wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said. "Explain to the table why you told me Grandpa was a criminal to get me to sign a quitclaim deed." Marcus stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. "This is ridiculous," he shouted, pointing a finger at me. "She's off her meds. Mom, Dad, look at her. She shows up here after 3 years of silence, probably high, and starts accusing me of fraud. I have been the one holding this family together. I have been managing the assets while she played in the dirt." "Sit down, Marcus," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. He looked at me, then at the paper in my hand. "Alice, those are serious accusations. Marcus has doubled the portfolio value in the last 5 years." "Has he?" Grandpa spoke up. It was the first time he had spoken clearly all night. His voice wasn't trembling anymore. It was deep, resonant, and commanded absolute silence. Marcus froze. "Grandpa, don't listen to her. She's trying to manipulate you." "I may be old, Marcus," Grandpa said, slowly standing up. He didn't need his cane. "But I can still read a balance sheet, and I can certainly read a liar." Grandpa reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the notebook he had used in the diner. "Alice isn't the only one who has been doing some digging," Grandpa said. "I called the bank yesterday, the bank where you said the tax settlement was wired." Marcus went pale. "Grandpa, privacy laws, you can't just—" "I am the primary account holder, you idiot," Grandpa snapped. "There was no wire transfer to the IRS. There was, however, a series of transfers to an offshore account in the Caymans. $3 million. My money, Alice's money." My mother put her hand over her mouth. "Marcus," she whispered, "is this true?" "They're lying," Marcus screamed, losing all composure. He looked like a trapped animal. Grandpa is senile, he doesn't know what he's looking at. And Alice is a jealous failure who couldn't handle the real world. I earned that money, I managed it, I deserve it. You deserve a jail cell, I said calmly. You have no proof, Marcus sneered, turning on me. You signed the deed. It's mine, you can't touch it, it's ironclad. Actually, I said, leaning forward. That's the funny part. You were so busy stealing, you didn't read the original deed Grandpa gave me. I watched the confusion cloud his eyes. He really didn't know. The reversionary clause, I said. Grandpa retained an interest. If the property wasn't my primary residence for 5 years, ownership reverts to the grantor. Since you kicked me out and rented it to college kids, you don't own it, Marcus. Grandpa does. And, Grandpa added, his eyes hard as flint, since you have been collecting rent on a property you don't own, that constitutes theft. Grand larceny, actually, given the amount. Marcus looked at our parents, desperate for an ally. Mom, Dad, are you going to let them do this to me? I'm your son, I'm the one who made you proud. My father, the corporate lawyer, was looking at Marcus with a dawning expression of horror. He wasn't looking at a son anymore, he was looking at a liability. He was looking at a criminal defendant. You told us, Richard started, his voice shaking. You told us the estate was secure. You told us Alice was the drain on the finances. I did what I had to do, Marcus yelled. I needed the capital, I had some bad calls, I needed to cover the margins. I was going to pay it back. So you admitted it, I said softy. You had bad calls, you lost money, so you stole mine to cover your tracks. I was going to fix it, Marcus roared. He lunged toward the table, grabbing the portfolio of papers he had brought for Grandpa to sign. Sign the papers, Grandpa. Sign them now, and I can fix all of this. I just need the liquidity from the bonds. It was a pathetic, desperate move. He was trying to bully an 80-year-old man into giving him more money to cover the money he had already stolen. No, Grandpa said. Marcus froze. He looked around the room. The walls were closing in. The mask of the successful wealth manager had completely disintegrated, leaving behind a scared, greedy child. I'm leaving, Marcus spat. You're all crazy. I'm leaving, and you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I don't think so, I said, because there's one more guest coming to dinner. As if on cue, the doorbell rang. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. He looked at the door, then back at me. Who is that? He whispered. I think you know, I said. You've been terrified of them for 4 years. But this time, the investigation is real. The ringing of the doorbell seemed to vibrate through the floorboards, shaking the foundation of the lie Marcus had built. Marcus stared at the door, his chest heaving. The arrogance that had defined him for the last decade was gone, replaced by the primal fear of a cornered animal. He looked at Richard, his eyes wide and wet. Dad, he croaked. Dad, don't let them in. Call your partners, call the firm, tell them this is a misunderstanding. My father, Richard, stood frozen. He was a man who had built a career on navigating legal gray areas, on finding loopholes, on protecting the wealthy from consequences. But looking at his son, sweaty, hysterical, and clearly guilty, he looked paralyzed. I can't, Marcus, Richard whispered, his voice sounding hollow. If you moved money offshore, if you defrauded Grandpa, that's federal, that's beyond me. The front door opened. We heard the heavy, authoritative tread of boots on the marble foyer. 2 uniformed officers entered the dining room, followed closely by a man in a plain suit and Mr. Sterling, Grandpa's attorney. The air in the room seemed to be sucked out. My mother, Laura, let out a small, strangled whimper and collapsed into her chair, covering her mouth with both hands. Marcus Cameron? The detective in the suit asked. His voice was calm, bored even. He held up a badge. I'm Detective Miller, Fraud and Financial Crimes Division. We have a warrant for your arrest. Marcus stumbled back, knocking his chair over. It clattered loudly against the hardwood. No, he stammered, backing toward the patio doors. No, this is a mistake. My grandfather, he's confused. Tell them, Grandpa. Tell them I was managing the accounts for you. Grandpa Cameron didn't flinch. He stood like a statue, leaning on the table with both hands, his blue eyes locked on Marcus. "I told them everything, Marcus," Grandpa said, his voice ringing with a finality that chilled me to the bone. "I gave Mr. Sterling full access to the trust records this morning. We saw the transfers. We saw the shell companies. We saw the rental income you've been hiding." "You set me up," Marcus screamed. He looked wild now, his tie crooked, his hair disheveled. "You set me up. I was trying to build something. I was trying to be the heir you wanted." "You were stealing from your own blood," I said, stepping forward. I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The fear was gone. The sister who worshipped him was gone. I was just the witness to his destruction. "You let me sleep in a car, Marcus. You let me freeze. You let me starve. Also, you could drive a Porsche and pretend to be a tycoon." The detective stepped forward, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal caught the light of the chandelier. "Marcus Cameron, you are under arrest for grand larceny, wire fraud, and elder abuse," the detective recited. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Marcus didn't turn around. He lunged toward my father, grabbing Richard's lapels. "Dad, do something. You're a lawyer. Stop them. They can't arrest me here. Not in front of her." He gestured wildly at me. Richard slowly peeled Marcus's fingers off his jacket. His face was gray. He looked at his son with a mixture of horror and revulsion. "You used my firm's letterhead," Richard said softly. "I saw the documents in Alice's folder. You forged my signature on the quitclaim witness line. You implicated me, Marcus. You didn't just steal from your grandfather, you put my entire career, my license, at risk." "Dad," Marcus begged. "Don't," Richard said, turning his back on him. "Don't call me that right now." The officers moved in. There was a brief struggle, nothing heroic, just a pathetic flailing of limbs as they forced Marcus's arms behind his back. The click of the handcuffs was the loudest sound in the world. As they marched him out, Marcus twisted his head back to look at me. His eyes were filled with hate. "You're nothing," he spat at me. "You're a gardener, you'll blow it all in a year. You're nothing without me." I watched him go. I didn't look away. I didn't cry. "I'm the one with the house," I said quietly, though he was already being shoved through the doorway. When the front door slammed shut, the silence that descended on the dining room was heavy and suffocating. My mother was sobbing openly now, her head on the table. My father was staring out the window into the darkness. Grandpa Cameron slowly sat back down. He looked exhausted. He looked 20 years older than he had an hour ago. "Alice," he said softly, "get the car, take me home." "What about us?" my mother wailed, looking up, her mascara running down her face. "Dad, please, we didn't know. You have to believe us. We didn't know he was doing this." Grandpa looked at his daughter. There was no anger in his face anymore, just a deep, profound disappointment. "You didn't know because you didn't want to know," Grandpa said. "You liked the expensive gifts he bought you. You liked the galas he took you to. And we. And Alice needed you. When your daughter called you begging for a place to sleep, you chose the lie because it was more comfortable than the truth." He stood up, signaling for me to help him. "I'm not disowning you, Laura," Grandpa said, pausing at the door. "But Alice is now the executor of the estate. If you need anything at all, you will ask her. And I suggest you learn how to be very, very polite." We walked out into the cool night air. The flashing lights of the police cruiser were fading down the driveway. I helped Grandpa into the passenger seat of the Lincoln, then walked around to the driver's side. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't driving away from a disaster. I was driving toward a future. 6 months later, the spring thaw had finally come. I stood in the backyard of the brownstone, my boots deep in the mud. The air smelled of wet earth and potential. The concrete slab Marcus had installed was gone, jackhammered away at my request. In its place, I was rebuilding the garden. It wasn't going to be the same garden as before. I was planting differently now. Stronger roots, hardier plants, things that could survive a harsh winter and come back blooming. The legal proceedings were swift and brutal. With Grandpa's testimony and the paper trail Mr. Sterling uncovered, Marcus didn't have a leg to stand on. He took a plea deal to avoid the maximum sentence, but he was still looking at 8 years in a minimum security facility. The wealth management firm he claimed to own turned out to be a P.O. box and a website. My parents were adjusting. The scandal hit their social circle hard. People they had known for decades stopped inviting them to parties. My father had to take an early retirement from his firm to avoid an ethics inquiry regarding the forged signatures. They were quieter now, humble. Every Sunday they called me. They asked how I was. They asked if I needed anything. I answered, but I kept the conversations short. Forgiveness is a garden that takes a long time to grow, and the soil there was still rocky. I heard the back gate squeak open. I turned to see Grandpa Cameron walking slowly down the path. He was using a walker now. The stress of the trial had taken a toll on his heart, but he was smiling. "You missed a spot," he teased, pointing his cane at a patch of weeds near the fence. "I'm getting to it," I laughed, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. "How are you feeling?" "Lighter," he said. He sat down on the teak bench I had installed for him. "Mr. Sterling tells me the restitution payments have started processing. Marcus's assets, the car, the condo, the investments have been liquidated. It's not everything he took, but it's enough to refill your trust." "I don't need the trust, Grandpa," I said, leaning on my shovel. "I have the house. I have my job back at the landscape firm. I'm okay." "I know you are," he said softly. He looked around the garden, his eyes misting over. "You know, when I gave you this house, I wasn't just giving you property. I was giving you a test. I wanted to see what you would build." "I lost it, though," I reminded him. "I let him take it." "No," Grandpa shook his head. "You sacrificed it to save me. That's a different thing entirely. Marcus built a house of cards. You built a home. And when the storm came, his fell down and yours is still standing." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. "I'm updating my will next week," he said. "Everything goes to you, Alice. The estate, the portfolio, the charitable foundation, all of it." "Grandpa, I don't want." "It's not a gift," he interrupted sternly. "It's a job. I need someone I trust to use it well, someone who knows what it's like to have nothing, so they appreciate the value of having something." He opened the box. Inside was a simple iron key. It was the key to his old office, the original headquarters of the company he built 50 years ago. "I trust you, Alice," he said. "Don't let me down." I looked at the key, then at the garden, then at the old man who had saved my life in a Walmart parking lot. I took off my gardening gloves and took the key. It felt heavy and cold in my hand, but it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like an anchor. "I won't," I promised. He smiled, closing his eyes and tilting his face up to the sun. "Good. Now, are you going to finish planting those hydrangeas, or are we going to starve? I believe you promised me lunch." "Lunch it is," I said. I looked up at the back of the brownstone. The windows were clean. The bricks were warm. It was mine. Really, truly mine. And as I walked toward the house to make sandwiches for my grandfather, I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking ahead.